In 1986, Tom Hawks was 39, a man worn by life's quiet moments and unspoken struggles. He had two teenage sons,
Did you hear
the result
anything?
of a marriage that had unraveled that very year. The divorce had been the final chapter of a relationship that no longer fit, and Tom was left to rebuild, one piece at a time. On the surface, life seemed ordinary, yet a sense of change was thick in the air. One afternoon, Tom found himself at a local chili cook-off in Newport Beach, California, a charming, sun-kissed slice of life where people mingled, laughed, and filled the air with the scent of homemade dishes. As Tom scanned the crowd, something, or rather, someone, caught his eye. Across the sea of faces, a woman stood out like a beacon. She was stunning, and for reasons Tom couldn't explain, he couldn't tear his gaze away. He stared for a moment too long. She noticed. It was subtle at first, but she caught him, and their eyes locked. A fleeting moment. She smiled, a soft blush rising on her cheeks before she quickly looked away, her gaze momentarily slipping from his. And in that instant, Tom felt the weight of embarrassment pressing down on him, his heart racing with a mixture of surprise and regret. But something shifted in him. He knew he couldn't let this moment slip away. Tom, the ruggedly handsome, mustachioed man who could command any room, didn't hesitate. He walked over, his stride confident, despite the unfamiliar flutter in his chest. He introduced himself, and the woman's smile deepened. Her name was Jackie, 29, single, and in that moment, she seemed to radiate warmth. And just like that, they clicked. What started as a simple conversation grew into a deep and powerful connection. It was immediate, undeniable, one of those rare, once-in-a-lifetime meetings that Tom never saw coming. Within a few years, by 1989, they were married, surrounded by friends and family in a ceremony that felt both joyful and surreal. Jackie moved in with Tom and his two sons, and though the boy's biological mother was still around, they began calling Jackie Mom. Jackie was not just a stepmother, she became the heart of their home. She had always dreamed of motherhood, but a terrible motorcycle accident at 22 had stolen that dream. The trauma left her unable to have children of her own. When she was given the chance to raise Tom's sons, she embraced the role with open arms. Through the years, Tom and Jackie raised their boys with a fierce love. She was the mother they needed, nurturing, kind, and unwavering. By 2002, the boys had grown up, and the house felt emptier than ever. For Tom and Jackie, it was a bittersweet moment. They had spent nearly 2 decades building their identities as parents, yet they knew this day would come, and they had planned for it. They had been saving for years, squirreling away every penny. They had a plan, a dream that began as a whispered hope years ago: retirement on the water. Not a life of luxury, but one of simple freedom, sailing along the California and Mexican coastlines. Neither Tom nor Jackie had much money, but they had a knack for saving, for stretching a dollar, and they could live frugally without sacrificing what mattered most. So when the day came and the boys were gone, Tom and Jackie sold their house in Newport Beach. The sale gave them enough money, coupled with their years of savings, to buy a small, old yacht. They named it the Well-Deserved. The boat wasn't glamorous, far from it, but it was theirs. They worked on it, scrubbing, cleaning, and fixing it up as best they could. By the summer of that year, the boat had become more than just a vessel. It was a home. It was everything they had worked for. For the next 2 years, they lived their dream. They sailed up and down the coast, the rhythm of the waves becoming a part of their soul. They fished, they watched sunsets, and they shared cocktails under the vast sky. Life was simple, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like they had everything they ever needed. Then in 2004, the phone rang. It was their son. He had news. He was about to become a father. The first grandchild. Tom and Jackie were ecstatic. Jackie especially found joy in the idea of becoming a grandmother. It was a role she had longed for, a second chance at motherhood, and she could already picture herself holding that baby. Even though their life on the boat was idyllic, they knew it was time to settle closer to family. so they made the decision to sell the well-deserved. They listed it for sale, asking $500,000. It didn't take long for a young couple, the De Leons, to reach out with an offer. Tom and Jackie were thrilled. They called their sons to share the news. It seemed like everything was falling into place. But then something changed. A few days passed, and still, no word from Tom and Jackie. Their sons began calling, but the calls were unanswered. This was uncharacteristic. Tom and Jackie always kept in touch. Alarm bells went off. Tom's brother, Jim, a retired police chief, decided to investigate. He drove to Newport Beach, hoping to find them, or at least figure out what was happening. At the dock, Jim noticed a few things. The boat, the well-deserved, seemed off. The lines that should have been neatly stowed were hanging over the edge. Tarps that should have been covering the control panels were missing. Dirty towels hung out of a porthole. This didn't seem like Tom and Jackie. It felt wrong. Jim left a note for the new owners and called his brother. No answer. He called Patricia, the woman who had been managing Tom and Jackie's finances. No large deposits, no word. Jim felt a growing sense of dread. So he contacted the Newport Beach police, reporting Tom and Jackie as missing. The investigation began, but the clues were sparse. Then the police started digging into the De Leons. Skylar De Leon had a criminal record, armed robbery, a conviction that raised suspicions. The police soon learned that Skylar had used stolen money to buy the yacht. The money, dirty and laundered, had come from a robbery, and Skylar had been trying to turn it into clean funds by selling the yacht. But the investigation quickly uncovered something darker. Skylar, Jennifer, and John Kennedy were involved in a chilling plot. They weren't just buying a yacht, they were plotting to murder Tom and Jackie. Skylar had recruited a young man named Alonzo to help carry out the crime. On the day of the sea trial, when Tom and Jackie boarded the well-deserved, they had no idea that they were stepping into a trap. Once they were far from shore, Skylar and John attacked. Tom was subdued. Alonzo grabbed Jackie, restraining her. They forced the couple to sign over the yacht and access to their bank accounts under duress. Then, in an act of horrific cruelty, Skylar attached an anchor to Tom and Jackie's handcuffs and drug it overboard, dragging them into the ocean. What followed was a cold and calculated act of murder. Skylar, Jennifer, and John remained eerily calm, indifferent to the horrific fate they had just sealed for Tom and Jackie. The couple fought against the pull of the anchor, but it was too much. They were dragged beneath the surface of the water, disappearing into the dark depths of the ocean. The investigation, filled with twists and false leads, eventually led to Skylar, Jennifer, and the others being arrested. Skylar confessed to his involvement in the money laundering scheme, but he remained tight-lipped about the murder. He, Jennifer, and John received life sentences, while Alonzo, who had cooperated with the police, received a reduced sentence of 20 years.